Hey guys, Tom Barclay here. I'm just got back to my car, very near Villa Park after, unfortunately for Tottenham's perspective, a second cup exit in the space of 3 days. A defeat to Aston Villa, 2-1 in the FA Cup, which leaves Spurs' hopes of any kind of success or any sense of a good season really hanging on the Europa League now, and heaping more pressure on Ange Postecoglou, who's been going through a rough old time of it over this last couple of months when he's been out without a lot of players, a lot of frustration in the stands, a lot of anger directed towards the watching Daniel Levy from a considerable amount of away fans. Actually, I've been to Villa Park many times, and normally in league games you get only a smaller section of away fans. But for this one, a big part of I'm not quite sure what the name of the stand is, the opposite of the Holt end, the top section was also Spurs fans, so it was even louder than it might have been some of the anti-Daniel Levy chants and some of the other chants which I'll come on to during the game, which made for interesting listening, put it that way, given the sort of mood at the moment for Spurs. I hope you can see me, it's pretty dark out here. Hopefully the light continues, so I'll look a little bit under the shadows here, yeah, a really frustrating match for Tottenham off the back of that horrendous defeat at Anfield just 3 days ago when they lost 4-0, 4-1 on aggregate to go out the Carabao Cup, and now out of the FA Cup. I mean, first of all, as always with Tottenham now, they were without a raft of players, 11 players injured, 12 players unavailable when you add in Dane Scarlett being ineligible. You're looking at the bench. I mean, there were no senior attacking options on the bench. Just while I've got it in my mind, obviously Jamie Donnelly has been a bit of a talking point this weekend after his wonder goal. It wasn't actually a goal, it was an own goal, I suppose, against Man City for Leyton Orient, but amazing strike. Maybe a few fans might be wondering why he wasn't recalled during this window. I imagine, I don't know for sure, but I would hazard a fair guess that there probably was a recall clause, because there generally is in most loans during season-long loans, particularly with younger players going out on loan, like we saw with Scarlett, mainly in case the club wants to recall them to sell them or to get more game time elsewhere, as was the case with Dane Scarlett. But there's only a short window when that's actually possible during windows, when the window is open. So my understanding is that basically Spurs felt like he was better served spending the whole season out at Orient, where he's getting loads of game time and really progressing, rather than come back just to help with the sort of injury crisis, which really does look like it may ease up fairly soon. So that's why he wasn't in there. But anyway, lots of players missing. Ange went quite an attacking lineup, I suppose. He had Mikey Moore starting from the off, Kulusevski at number 10, Bergvall and Bentancur as the holding midfielders, Archie Gray rather than Ben Davis, who was an unused sub in the end, at centre-back with Kevin Danzo, Porro back in the team. But they got off to the worst possible start, and really you've got to mainly blame Antonin Kinski for this. Yeah, the keeper, who's obviously come in from Slavia Prague in the January window, has had some mixed games so far. He's had some very good games. He's also looked at times a little shaky, maybe understandable for a 21-year-old coming into English football, a real step up from the Czech league. But he had an absolute nightmare here for the shot from Jacob Ramsey, which was straight at him inside 59 seconds, and it just basically went through him. I mean, watching the goal back, I mean, Porro was bombing on, and he was out of position, allowing the excellent Morgan Rogers, what a signing he's been for Villa, maybe another one that, I mean, whenever you get a good young player who seems to go for a relatively small fee and go on to do brilliantly, I suppose, like Cole Palmer, but even more so Rodgers, because he's only 15 million from Middlesbrough. You must have other clubs like Tottenham wondering how they sort of missed out on that one. But Villa have got a gem in Morgan Rogers, who looks like he's really pushing for an England starting space, let alone in the squad. But anyway, he exploited that, played it through to Ramsey, but his shot wasn't really that good. It really should have been saved from Kinski, and it just went through him, and it was a terrible start for Postecoglou's side, who really didn't need that at that point. But in fairness to Kinski, to be fair, when you look at the overall game, if it weren't, despite that horrendous error, if it weren't for a number of saves that he made throughout the rest of the game, it could have been a bit of a hiding here. I think he really kept the score down at times, and kept Spurs in it. I do think the scoreline over 2-1 did flatter Tottenham, really, over their old performance, which again was pretty meek, not to the same standards as Liverpool, obviously. And they did have their chances. I mean, Son had an absolutely fantastic chance at 1-0 in the first half, where Mikey Moore out wide plays the ball, puts it on a plate for Son. It was a lovely delivery, and there just wasn't enough conviction, the word that Ange often uses when he talks about his strikers when they haven't taken the chances, lack of conviction from his shot. And when you're facing Emi Martinez, who's one of the best goalkeepers in the world, particularly in those situations, a World Cup winner and just so big, you never really fancied him. And it's a shame, because I feel like even though Son was maybe poor at Liverpool, I think overall he's been better of late. So he really, you know, given how it's been going all season, I feel like if he was going to put that away, it was probably in this kind of game. And he's got great, you know, history at Villa Park, a hat-trick not that long ago. I think he scored last season in the 4-0. But he didn't take it, and that's just the way it's been going for Tottenham. So they went through to half-time. Then Mikey Moore comes off at half-time. I think a lot of fans are frustrated by that substitution based on my brief response on social media. I mean, who knows if that's really reflective of the overall fan base, but I got a few people tweeting me directly about that substitution. And bringing Basuma on, obviously had an absolute mare at Liverpool, so they weren't too impressed with that. But to be honest, from where I was standing, that ball to Son, barring that ball to Son, which, well, as I say, was on the money, I thought Moore was struggling a little bit in this game. I don't know, I just think it's such a big ask to ask a 17-year-old in a struggling team that keeps changing with the personnel they've got to come in and make as big an impact as he is. And he's such a talent. And he's going to be, I think, a really good player. But to expect so much of him at this stage is asking a lot. So it didn't surprise me when he came off, as much as that might have frustrated fans when he did. And a lot of you may disagree with me on that one, but I wasn't thinking that was a bad decision. And if anything, I did think Spurs were much better after the break. I'm not saying that's down to Mikey Moore coming off and Basuma coming on, but hey, the change did seem to improve them a bit. Having said that, at 1-0, it was about making the most of this early stage of pressure in the second half, and they just didn't. And then just as Marcus Rashford, who from the national point of view, apart from Postecoglou and his future, was the big story today, his debut for Villa, just as he was being called and getting ready to come on, Villa scored what was the killer second goal. That man, Morgan Rogers, again, what a player he is, was basically Johnny on the spot when Spurs sort of failed to clear Daniel Marlin's ball across. He's a good player too. Porro tried to sort of clear it, or tried to stop it getting, I think, to Ramsey, who was at the far post ready for a tap in, but his clearance, it was barely a clearance. He basically just stopped the ball, and there was Rogers to sort of smash it into the top roof of the net from close range. And that was 2-0. And at that point you thought, that is game over. And how bad is this going to be, really? It could have got worse when Asensio, who came off the bench for Villa, making his debut as well, had a really lovely interplay with Rogers again, who had a shot wide, but if he put that away, you know, that could have been 3-0 easily. And then Spurs do go and score in injury time, and it's kind of overlooked, I suppose, because of the wider situation and how badly it's going for Tottenham results-wise, and being out of the Cup again this week. But good news, I suppose, the silver lining at least, that debutant Matisse Tell, who I thought overall had quite a difficult game, spent most of the first half playing left wing rather than through the middle, which I was slightly surprised by. Towards the end of the game, went through the middle, and I thought his finish was excellent. Lovely ball from Kulusevski from over from the right, sort of cutting in with his left foot, delivers a ball, but the way Tell gets his foot on it to prod it past Martinez was hopefully a hint of what's to come and his ability. And it was a really, really good goal, but unfortunately for Tottenham's perspective, it wasn't enough. And like I said from the beginning, I felt like 2-1 probably flattered them. And the worrying thing, I think the chants in this game were a big sort of storyline from the away fans. So obviously we had Daniel Levy out, you know, throughout the game a lot today. We've had it loads of late, but it felt like there was a lot, and it, you know, must have been difficult for him watching up in the stands, hearing that. But one of the moments that I felt was quite worrying for Ange Postecoglou's point of view. So first of all, no one's really been against him. The only time that I can think of fans in grounds that have sort of given him some real flack was generally Bournemouth away when they lost 1-0. And maybe Everton as well. You might get the odd sort of dissenting bit of abuse from a fan, but on sort of widespread sort of chants against him specifically, I think it was Bournemouth away. And I thought that was mainly because he didn't go over, you know, near enough to the travelling fans to thank them for for their, the efforts they made to come to the game. So I don't even know if that was specifically against him as wanting him out. But the worrying moment for him was 18 minutes in, only 18 minutes into the game, when Spurs had made a really poor start. Spurs fans were starting to sing pretty self-deprecating, mocking songs about themselves, saying, you're singing, we're effing SHIT, how SHIT, trying to keep this clean, must you be, we're only 1-0 down. I mean, that kind of stuff is pretty gallows humour, but it sort of speaks to how badly it's going, I suppose, from a performance point of view. That when you're hearing that, and the owner, the chairman is hearing that, it's not great, is it? It's not great. It doesn't reflect well on what the manager is producing on the pitch, or his players are producing on the pitch, when fans are basically taking the PISS out themselves, really. I don't know if I needed to star that one out, maybe not. So that was quite worrying. And then obviously the home fans, as is the way with supporters at pretty much any club, they can be, I don't know if callous is the right word, but when things are going badly, they do enjoy mocking or taunting any manager who's under pressure with those chants of sacked in the morning, which Postecoglou had to endure twice in this game. Sacked, you're getting sacked in the morning a few times. So it just underlines sort of how difficult it has been in this game for him. And you are sort of worrying about his position right now, because it felt like the cups were massive. They're out of both of them now. Yes, they're through to the last 16 of the Europa League, and that could be crucial. And also a massive part is the injured players, and the fact that they're coming back soon, and the fact that they have I don't know if you want to, it depends on your perspective, but they did bring three senior players in this window. So depending on your perspective, whether you think that's backing him or not, it's not as if they didn't bring anyone in at all, which would have been sort of quite a stark message in terms of support for the manager if they brought no one in. So they did bring some players in. So if you're looking at the signs of sort of reason to believe that this isn't sort of terminal, these results for Postecoglou, those are your reasons, I suppose. And we'll wait to see. It felt like if it had been a hiding, you were worrying, and I still am sort of worrying to a certain extent. I haven't got any intel on that front at all, but I generally got the feeling before the game that they would still stick with him and try and get through this, and understanding for the injuries, and that's what I would expect at this point, filming this right after the game, what I think will play out going forward. But let's see, on that front, let's see going forward. I mean, on to sort of Ange's comments after the game. Just finally, before I actually mention that, full-time, I have to say, Matthias Tell did seem to be lapping up his debut goal at the end. He was sort of going over to the fans when most of the players wanted to get off the pitch. He was walking over to the supporters and I don't know if he's signing some autographs. He definitely gave his shirt away, so he seemed to be enjoying it. And I guess fair play to him. He's just scored his first goal for his new club, as difficult as the circumstances are in terms of the wider picture for Spurs. He's had a really difficult season at Bayern Munich. He's been really struggled for opportunities. Hasn't scored a goal all season until now. He's decided to make this move, and based on Ange Postecoglou's comments and what we're led to believe, it will be a permanent move in the summer. And so he has basically joined Tottenham permanently, and he's made that big decision to go and leave Bayern Munich for Spurs, which at the moment does feel a bit risky given where they're at, at least in the league on paper right now. And he scored, so, I guess fair play to him for enjoying it. On to Ange and his comments afterwards. We spoke to him in the press conference, and to be honest, it was one big defence of his players and how shattered they are. I mean, after a game like that, just to put into perspective from what it's like to be a national newspaper journalist, we will get, pressure from our editors to ask questions, difficult questions like feeling, do you feel like you're going to be back? Do you feel like you've got the time to turn this around? Do you feel under pressure? All that kind of stuff, which, generally that's the role of a journalist, but they make for difficult conversations. And specifically, I asked that question. I think it was about 6 or 7 questions in the press conference, including from my good mates from the Tottenham Way, Dan Kilpatrick of the Standard and Tom Allnutt of the Times. And I asked him basically about feeling like will he be given time to turn this around? And his answer to that, he basically deflected about himself. He said he's not interested in his own position effectively. But he essentially said, whether you think I think the quote was something like, people can say I've done a bad job, whatever. Basically, I don't care whether they think that or not, but don't criticise these players. And he then went on to talk, so he named each individual player that's out, and he made the point that it's not just been, as we all know, it's not just been this one game, there's 2 games. It's been going on for months now, and they are just shattered. And it's funny, like there have been times when he has not really tried to lean too much on this defence, because he knows it's literally a tired excuse seems strong, but it's a tired reasoning behind the performances, and he knows that people are tired of hearing it. But I guess after this performance, as he said the other day, when it comes to sometimes the sun analogy, when he talks about how like sometimes you go outside, it's really bright, you look up at the sun, you think, oh, what's that? And you think maybe it's not the sun, but it is the sun. And in this case, it is the injuries in his mind as to why the form has been like it is, and why the team is struggling so much physically. And Tom Allnut, my mate at the Times, actually asked him, like, he was asking about the style of Postecoglou play and how it's a departure from what we've seen before, and why is it not still possible effectively to still play the way he wants to. And he said it's just not. They're too tired. They can't do what he wants them to do, so he's having to go a different route. So that was basically his defence and his comments after the game. And he said that there's a reset coming, in the sense that they've got a full week off before Man United. That is the first time. So I was going through it, and apart from that week at the start of January, between December the 29th, where I forget who they played, and then they played, I think, Newcastle on the 4th of January. So that was a full week, or about 6 days between the games there. There hasn't been a week without a game in the middle since August, maybe. And that is what comes with the territory when you're playing European football. And that's what he wanted last season. But when you've got so many players injured, it shows you how difficult it can be. Now, I think a lot of people out there will maybe think I'm almost like an Ange apologist by talking about this, but I consistently said throughout this, you cannot analyse what's going wrong at Tottenham this season without talking about the injuries as a crucial, massive factor. Now, I think where people are if you dismiss it out of hand because you're bored of hearing about it, then it's not fair. But I suppose the crux of the matter is, when it comes to Postecoglou and the way it's going with Spurs, do you think it is enough of a mitigating factor for all of these performances and these disappointments, like going out the cup, to excuse it all? And you can basically think, when the players come back, then that's the fair time to judge him. I think that's where I'm at, but it doesn't mean that you can't criticise any performances, and things like Leicester at home, particularly that sort of collapsing the start of the second half, I think are definitely fair to criticise them for that. But in the wider picture, that's kind of where I stand. I don't know whether the majority of fans are in that space now. Obviously online in particular, it's often the loudest people who are sort of anti whatever it is who shout the loudest. But also a lot of people make fair points on this. Back to that podcast I do with Tottenham Way, Marcus Buckland, our host, I think is pretty much sort of lost faith to a certain extent with Ange Postecoglou. He makes a fair case for it. So it's interesting to see where Spurs fans are at, and I'd like to hear what you think on that front, really. So let me know. But he still thinks there is things to play for. There's plenty to look forward to, he said, or plenty to play for. And it's basically the Europa League, really, isn't it, now at this point? And it's about when players come back from injury, of which there will be many coming soon. And I actually asked Unai Emery in his press conference, I said, as a fellow manager, is it fair to judge Postecoglou right now, given all the injuries he's had and excessive amounts of injuries? And he did say, look, every club gets injuries, but Tottenham's are more than normal. And he said, and he was generally quite praiseworthy, Postecoglou, yes, obviously fellow managers are generally quite praiseworthy of their fellow brethren, I suppose. But he said, of course, when they recover players, they will perform again like they were doing before. So I guess it's up to you whether you think that's going to be the case or not. And I suppose what really matters is whether Daniel Levy thinks that's going to be the case or not. So we'll wait to see this week. Fingers crossed from Postecoglou's point of view that is the case. And generally, that's the feeling I've got so far. But obviously it's the immediate aftermath of the game, so we'll wait to see. But overall, a disappointing night. Again, after a disappointing week. Both the cups are gone. and now I guess it is all on the Europa League, which doesn't recommence for Tottenham until March, which hopefully by then he will have his players back fit, his key players back, including his centre-backs. We really hope so for Tottenham's point of view, because they are so crucial to this, and hopefully the injuries can start to ease up going into this period where they won't be playing quite as many games as they have been, which has been devastated their season because of all the injuries they picked up. Anyway, I'm going to head back to Surrey from Birmingham now. I'll try and put this on as soon as I can. Hopefully it will load up quickly, and yeah, let me know your thoughts after a disappointing result at Villa Park. Cheers, guys.